What if I told you that almost every decision you make is shaped by something you never mention, rarely think about, and yet carry with you like a silent passenger? Imagine for a moment the hidden force that freezes you at the thought of quitting your job, ending a relationship, or even just saying how you really feel. Why does the very idea of starting over make your chest tighten, your breath catch, and your stomach twist? Could it be that beneath all these little fears lies one massive one hiding in plain sight? Death. But not just the physical end we all know, but the psychological death of identity, the ego certainty, the tiny funerals we hold for old habits and versions of ourselves we thought we needed to be. Carl Jung, one of the founding minds of modern depth psychology, believed the fear of death isn't only about dying, it's about living unconsciously, running from our shadow parts, staying stuck in the known and paralyzed by the unknown. So what happens when this fear takes the wheel of your life? Stick around, because by the end of this journey, you'll see how to wrest back control, and you might even feel a strange sense of relief in facing what most people run from. Way back, most of us weren't gently introduced to death. By age 5, you'd already heard your first, "Be careful, you'll hurt yourself," or "Don't do that, it's dangerous," and every scraped knee, every bedtime tale about villains meeting their doom, every hushed funeral whisper stored itself in your nervous system. Death wasn't explained. It was avoided, mourned, feared. From that fear, we built a blueprint. Avoid pain, avoid endings, avoid change. In psychology, this becomes part of our death anxiety. Ernest Becker argued in The Denial of Death that much of human behavior, our craving for fame, our routines, even moral superiority, are attempts to symbolically outrun death, to matter somehow, to control the uncontrollable. Jung took things further, suggesting that this fear shows up in our shadow self, the parts we deny, repress, and ignore. To him, death wasn't an end, but a transformation, a necessary cycle in the journey of individuation, of becoming whole. Yet instead of embracing that cycle, we resist because we've been taught that death equals loss, loss of control, loss of identity, loss of me. In resisting those losses, we resist our evolution. Consider this. Not every culture treats death like a horror story. In Mexico, Dia de los Muertos is a vibrant celebration of the dead. In parts of Asia and Africa, death is a transition, not a tragedy. Ancestors are honored, not erased. Souls are welcomed, not feared. What did they understand that we forgot? Fearing death doesn't stop it. It just makes us shrink our lives to avoid it, avoid taking risks, avoid falling in love, avoid changing careers, avoid looking inward. And ironically, that's the slowest death of all. Every major transformation, every breakup, move, career shift, breakdown, breakthrough, felt like a death. That's because it was the death of an identity, a pattern, a phase. Jung called these moments psychic deaths, necessary collapses of the false self to make room for something more authentic. But when we're terrified of those small deaths, we cling to what's familiar, even when it no longer fits. We stay in relationships that dull us, numb with routines that feel safe, silence parts of ourselves to keep the peace, all because the alternative, the unknown, is too scary. And here's the kicker. Fear isn't just emotional, it's physiological. Your amygdala, the brain's fear center, reacts to ego death almost the same way it reacts to physical danger. Your system doesn't know the difference. Change feels like dying. So what do we do about it? How do we stop letting a subconscious fear of death run our decisions, limit our growth, and shrink our lives? If the fear of death isn't just about dying, but about losing who we think we are, what do we do with that? Jung would say, "What you resist persists and grows in size." Deny those endings, and you feed them quietly through habits, clinging, overachieving, never slowing down long enough to ask, "Why am I really doing this?" Let's peel back that layer. Jung introduced a concept that changed how we see the human psyche: the shadow. The shadow is everything you reject about yourself. Every dark impulse, every fear, every desire you've shoved into the back closet of your mind. And guess what's hanging out in there? The fear of dying. All the little deaths you're terrified of. Being irrelevant, unloved, losing control, starting over, even being seen for real. Our culture tells us to be productive, positive, polished, but not raw, not uncertain. So we push those feelings down and call it being strong. We stay busy and call it purpose. We stay silent and call it peace. We unconsciously chase certainty. We pick the stable job over the one that lights us up. We choose the familiar relationship over the one that challenges us. We attach to our roles, the nice one, the smart one, the helper, because shedding those feels like dying. But real, authentic life asks us to die over and over again, to let go of who we were so we can become who we really are. And that's terrifying, because the shadow holds the truth. If you go there, you won't be the same. But also if you don't, you'll never truly live. Let's talk about comfort zones. You know that phrase, "better the devil you know"? That's death fear talking. That's your ego trying to avoid the unknown at all costs. And why wouldn't it? The unknown is where things end. The known is where they stay the same. Same friends, same beliefs, same identity. Even if it's hollow, even if you feel stuck, because at least it's familiar. But is it real? We confuse comfort with safety, but they're not the same. Comfort says, "Stay here, it's warm. Don't rock the boat." Growth says, "This version of you is expired. Let it go." Modern life traps us. Midlife crisis. Buy a car, feeling lost. Optimize your schedule. Everything becomes a way to control the uncontrollable, to numb what needs to be felt. To face your fear of endings is to admit you're not in control. And that, paradoxically, is freedom. Let's split the psyche into two modes. 1. The survival self. This part avoids discomfort, seeks approval, fears endings. It's the voice that says, "Stay small, stay liked, stay safe." 2. The becoming self. This version seeks truth even if it burns, lives with uncertainty, whispers, "Change is scary," but stagnation is scarier. These two are always at war. The survival self, driven by ego, obsesses over avoiding death, while the becoming self knows that to evolve, you must surrender. The more you cling to life out of fear, the less alive you feel. The more you accept your impermanence, the freer you become. This is what Jung called individuation, becoming whole by integrating your rejected parts, your shadow, your fears, even death itself. A person who integrates death isn't morbid, they're awake. They stop living by default, stop needing validation, stop following maps drawn by other people's fears, because they faced the dragon and realized it was them all along. Here's a question to sit with. Are you living to survive or to become? There's a subtle shift when you stop outrunning death and start sitting with it. At first, it's quiet. You notice the pauses, the empty spaces, the way silence feels less threatening. You no longer fill every gap with noise, plans, or stimulation, because you know the fear underneath was never about death itself. It was about disconnection from yourself, from the present, from the natural rhythm of impermanence that holds everything together. That realization doesn't come like a lightning bolt. It arrives like a whisper, one that rewrites your relationship with life. One truth hits harder the more you sit with it. We don't suffer because things end. We suffer because we hold on to them forever. We treat life like something to preserve in glass, a job that never changes, a relationship that feels immortal, a self that's always validated. But nothing real can stay still. Your body, your values, your worldview, they're in motion, always. To grip tightly is to suffer. Yet that's what we're conditioned to do, seek permanence in an impermanent world. Carl Jung warned against this spiritual stagnation. He called it identification with the persona, mistaking our masks for our true selves. The persona is the role we play, the image we project, but it quietly chokes our growth. So what happens when we release the grip? We begin to feel what was under the surface all along: stillness, openness, something deeper than identity. Not an absence, but a presence. Not the death of who you are, but the space where who you really are begins to emerge. Let's not pretend this is easy. We live in a culture that worships youth, avoids aging like it's a disease, pushes grief into polite corners, hides old age, sprays euphemisms on dying. We avoid death because it reminds us we're not in control, and that makes us uncomfortable, especially in a society that sells control as the highest currency. Control your body, your brand, your future. But death doesn't care about your marketing plan or your green smoothie routine. It arrives when it does, and it doesn't ask for permission. When we keep death hidden, we also hide everything it teaches us. We forget how to surrender. We forget how to live from depth instead of drama. We forget how to let go gracefully, consciously, without punishment. And in the process, we raise generations who confuse busyness with meaning and control with safety. But what if we could remember what death actually means? Not punishment, not failure, not collapse, but completion, a sacred full stop, a return, a doorway back to source. In many indigenous traditions, death is welcomed as a teacher. In African cosmologies, ancestors walk with the living. In Mexican culture, the dead are invited back with food and song. In Hinduism, death is part of the cosmic cycle of birth, life, dissolution, and rebirth. There's wisdom in cultures that don't sanitize death. They honor the transformation. You don't have to become a monk to see this. You just have to slow down enough to feel it. Let yourself mourn not just people, but versions of yourself that no longer serve. Let parts of you die without rushing to replace them with productivity or reinvention. Allow space for the silence that follows an ending, because something new is gestating in the dark. Jung once wrote that the greatest tragedies of life are not the things that happen to us, but the lives we never truly live because of fear. Maybe this is awakening, not escaping death, but allowing its wisdom to soften us. Maybe death isn't just a fact of life. Maybe it's the missing ingredient, the humbling force that keeps us real, that brings us back to what matters, that burns away illusion until all that's left is truth. If you've found yourself nodding along, take a moment right now. Tap that like button to help this message reach others who are ready to face what most avoid. And if you feel a spark of curiosity, drop a comment sharing the first little death you've been resisting. Let's turn this community into a space where we lean into discomfort together and grow. You've made it through a conversation most people avoid for a lifetime. Not many are willing to ask, is death shaping how I live? If you're still here, it means something in you is ready not just to understand death, but to stop letting the fear of it write your story. So let's talk about the after. Not after death, but after the fear. What does life look like when death is no longer the shadow behind every decision? Most of us have been trained to treat identity like a trophy. Build it, defend it, protect it at all costs. We wrap ourselves in statements. I'm this kind of person. I never do that. I always need this. And then life happens. Change arrives. Grief knocks. A new chapter begins. Suddenly, the identity we worked so hard to maintain cracks. That's where many people panic, but you don't have to. Once you stop fearing death, you stop holding on to a fixed identity. You become adaptable, not flaky, but fluid. You understand that who you are is a moving process, not a permanent product. Jung believed this was true maturity, not needing to be someone all the time, just needing to be real. This flexibility becomes your superpower. You're no longer devastated when old beliefs fall away. You're not crushed by change, you just shift. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. So how do you actually live with death close? Not fearfully, but consciously. It's not about fixating on your funeral guest list or obsessively drafting your will, though those can be good ideas. It's about living in a way that death wouldn't interrupt. It would complete. Ask yourself, if today were my last full day of consciousness, how would I treat my time? Would I still scroll past someone's words like nothing matters? Would I still save my truth for later? Would I keep postponing joy until everything else is done? Living with death in the room doesn't mean drama. It means deliberateness. You become less reactive, less easily offended, more grounded. You don't need every moment to go your way. You just want it to feel real. You stop giving energy to things that drain you, and you start protecting your peace like it's sacred, because it is. But practically, what now? Here are some ways people who've made peace with death tend to live. They ask better questions, not what do I need to fix, but what am I avoiding? Not how do I look, but does this feel true to me? They design their time with intention, no more mindless obligations. They block space for rest, silence, connection. They clear the air with loved ones. Apologize first, forgive first, so no one is left wondering. They honor the full spectrum. Not every day is inspiring. Some are quiet, grieving, ordinary. And that is part of living fully. Here's the most radical shift of all. When death is accepted, not feared, you stop outsourcing your courage. You don't wait for someone else to go first. You stop putting off what you know in your bones you need to do, because you know what's actually scary. Looking back and realizing you never really tried. Death teaches urgency, but not the hustle kind, the soul kind, the kind that whispers, you don't have forever, but you do have right now. And right now is enough to begin. This video hasn't been about death, it's been about aliveness. How we hold it, fear it, avoid it, and finally reclaim it. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You can't do that while spending your life avoiding endings. Let this be your reminder. Your time is precious because it's limited. And that doesn't make it sad. It makes it sacred. If this resonated, don't just close the tab. Subscribe to this channel and join our community of truth seekers. Hit that notification bell so you'll never miss a journey into the deeper layers of life. I'll see you in the next exploration. Trust me, you won't want to miss where we go from here.